Whenever you're ready.
Thank you. We'll get started. So we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pay respect to the Blackfoot people past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationships to the land. Lethbridge is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3, Oki. So welcome everyone. I would like to move into our first is the consent agenda. I know there's one thing that I would like to pull for a very simple piece that needs to be changed. That's the board budget committee report. Pull that. Is there anything else? Go ahead, Christine.
I would like the policy advisory committee.
Is there anything else? So we will be putting those under board chair report. Those under. Right?
Just like policy boundary alignment, we need to add some.
Okay. Okay. So we will be adding those. And then when I move on to approval of agenda, I do have a few items that we do need to add and take away. So I will start with, we're going to be removing item 12.4. And where 12.4 is the as was 06 update, and we will be adding a 12.4, and the 12.4 adding is the expulsion committee report. And we will be adding 9.4 is the refugee position statement. We've had that information out. And 9.5 and 9.6 are employee compensation. The first one, 9.5, is non-union compensation, and 9.7. Do you have a classification? Okay, the first one is the non-union compensation associate superintendent is the 9.5, and the second one is non-union compensation. Okay. And then we will naturally then make 9.7, we'll do the school boundary alignment committee, 9.8 is the board budget committee, and 9.9 is the policy advisory committee. Did I get those all accurate? Okay, so where do they, oh, we were putting them under board chair, sorry. So those last three instead, we will add them as 12.5 will be the school boundary alignment committee, 12.6 will be the board budget committee, and 12.7 will be the policy advisory committee. And I see a hand to my left. Tyler, go ahead.
Yep. For the non-union compensation, the associate superintendent, you have that coming before the non-union.
So we should
I think we should switch those
Okay.
around,
Okay.
just because it makes more sense
In order, yep.
in order and publicly how it goes. We just
Okay.
switch those.
So 9.5 will be employee compensation, non-union employee compensation. 9.6 will be non-union employee compensation, associate superintendent. Just switch those. Kristen, you're good there. Sorry, I may have messed that up from what you had said.
That was good now.
We're good? Okay. Are there any other pieces? Okay, so I need an approval for the amended agenda. Tyler, and those in favor? And that's carried. Next is approval of the minutes. I just need a full So I can have us go to 9.7, and maybe this is a question for Christine Lee. It does say that I abstained, which I did, and I declared at that point. The reason that I changes for the minutes? With that, could I have a motion to approve the minutes as amended? Christine? Those in favor? And that's carried. And next, we're jumping right into our associate superintendents in business and operations. Christine? Get your papers all ordered. I'll give you a minute. I gotta pull mine out.
Okay, I think I got it. Okay. Alrighty, so April was flew by in a flash because of Easter. So facility services. So we're excited. The sign has gone up at Gary Station for our new elementary school. For construction, we will be starting construction in probably end of June, early July. We'll start to dig. We will probably look at organizing some sort of a ceremony in September. Normally, sometimes we try and do like a shovel ceremony. Because of the timing of the election, can't do it in May. And depending on when cabinet is June, and we know what June's like. So we may try and do some sort of a opening ceremony to the construction, even though we've started a little bit of construction, but we'll look at trying to for September and down the road here when we get the government in place. Recycling projects going really well. We had 4 schools piloting in the education center, as you can see in the corner. It's going really well. We currently have a survey out to see how it's going. Progress reports where everything's going well. We just need signage is our biggest hurdle, and just people taking the time to just recognize what needs to go in our bins. We'll be ordering full division-wide bids probably in June, so that they're here in August, so that we can have them fixed for September for the full division-wide rollout. So we're excited. Good news, we received the planning funds for our West Side study. Alberta Education also noted that, we should do a study in West Lethbridge because we do have such growth. There's so many modular classrooms. There's just a recognized need that we need to look. And so that study will begin fairly soon. We have a consultant and as well as an architect firm that are will be working on that study, and we've also are including data from Holy Spirit as well. So they have the same issues that we do. So we're together. And the unfortunate news is we did not receive the 4 modular classrooms that we had requested for Colbanks. Colbanks is currently at 107% capacity and is growing, and we were hoping that we'd get some new modulars. However, the good news there is that we did receive the funding, news that we can get funding to demolish the old ECS portal that sits in front of Agnes Davidson. Is not safe, that we'll be able to take it down for that. What I have done since then, because not want to give up, I have contacted Alberta Education to see if there's any used portables that we could take for Colbanks and get them put on, because we just can't wait for another round to try and get something. And we're from our experience with Chinook, if the modulars are in decent shape, we can make them look pretty shiny and new once we've done patching them up and whatnot. So still waiting to hear. They do understand our need. The cutoff for getting a new modular is around 114% capacity. So they're checking on that. So we can get a couple of used ones. I've asked for 2. So one they're already built. So it makes sense. We're finishing up the one we have to get in for the fall. And so if we can get 2 used ones while we're doing that, that would be great. Because we definitely crunch for space. So that's going on there. Finance, of course, budget. We're working through the budget process, and occupational health and safety, we've completed all of our school site inspections this year, and we have, our schools are just getting better and better at safety items and making sure that our schools are safe. And we just got a few recommendations that we're presenting to the schools, and our team of Chris Chapman and Trish Simon will follow up with those schools to see how they're doing on those recommendations. In technology, wow, our technology team, so they not only support our schools daily with their technology needs, but they also support our students at showcasing technology, as well as even attending career fairs to encourage our students to consider careers as a technology professional. So they always go above and beyond their regular duties to do that. And we did have 6 U of L students that finished their practical on the VR 360 course that was offered by the U of L, and so we congratulate them on that accomplishment. And again, we're always presenting, again, esports, and so our team presented to over 60 educators to the Introduction of Esports Conference on April 4th. And so again, really proud of how our division also supports other school divisions so that they can provide opportunities for their students. Transportation. So as we said before, we will be not making any changes to our busing for the distance this coming school year, but that will be in place for the 24-25 school year. But the new piece that we added in this report was that the province of Alberta has changed their requirements and has removed the mandatory entry-level training, or what we actually call MELT, for new bus drivers. However, you will still require what we call S endorsement on your Class 2 license. And the S endorsement is really, it is a training program to make sure that you do have the skills and requirements to drive the school bus safely. So there's still, there are still training requirements, but it won't be the MELT program. And other than that, that's the highlights. Questions? Okay.
In terms of coal banks, I know you answered more questions once more. Are they going to be okay?
Yeah, we have so the one for sure is coming online for the school year. That will be ready for August. But they are continuing they can make it work. It's just they're continuing to grow. And so we need to not only look at this year, but we need to look at next year. When you get a new modular, sometimes you're over a year out. So if we didn't get it in this round, we got them new ones this round. We have them in place hopefully if all things went well for starting next school year. But now that we're not in that round, we're talking another year out, and we just can't. We're always behind the 8 ball when it comes to these things when they approve. So that's why we kind of pulled the desperation and said, look, we'll take whatever you can get us at this point. If we can have them in place for 2023-24 in the fall, that's great. But we definitely we'll need at least 2 for 24-25. So I think if they have to be used, we'll take them.
I know we hear from parents, not necessarily just school banks, but other schools, is the bursting of the seams piece, and there's not space, so we're able to answer those questions. Not seeing other comments, so I will add just in regards to the team that did go to support other school divisions in building their own esports team. And I do know that Mount River, out of that, Mount River School has connected. They're going to be working together with the Lethbridge College esports team to get back on the school division. So I thought that was great that that already has come out of that since the beginning. So thank you to our team for what they're doing to support other divisions. Seeing no other questions, we'll move on.
All right.
Instructional services.
mentioned before, Division of Instructional Services trip. Looking forward to going up next week, Thursday, Friday, to Parkland School Division and Red Deer Public to team with instructional services at both of those locations to brainstorm and hear how things look different, what are some challenges, and what structures they have in place that support the work that they do in their divisions. I think anytime you can get leadership together to brainstorm and talk about their portfolios, the passion is always very obvious, but as well the brainstorming and percolations that happen. So it's exciting to have that opportunity to be able to venture out. Wellness grants are going to be sent out right away here, so we'll be starting to look at 23-24 for interesting and creative ideas to be promoting wellness in our schools. Early education, I know there were some questions earlier last month of what locations will we be looking at, and as you can see there, we have determined where our locations will tentatively be. Currently, our enrollment and registration process is down compared to where it normally is, so we may have to look at holding one of those programs if we do not get sufficient enrollment. Dual credit deadlines and opportunities, we've just listed them there. Some of the, for you to have a look at what opportunities are being provided at the college, really exciting. Everything from botany, medical terminology, intro to design and software, nutrition and safety, composition, and intro to the trades, of course, is a continuation of what we will continue to build upon this year. And then Indigenous education, just 2 dates that I wanted to draw your attention to because we love Indigenous grad. It is truly an amazing event, and we have that planned on May 23rd at Chinook. So if you could pencil that into your agenda, that would be great to have trustee membership there. We also will be hosting for the first time an honor night on June 1st with Senator Joyce Fairbairn. Both of these events start at 5:30, and the honor night will be looking at celebrating awards to all students throughout the division that fall under the Indigenous Ed portfolio. So just wanted to draw those pieces to you. Thanks so much.
Craig?
Yeah, the grad on May 23rd, that's also the date of our board meeting. So is our board meeting cut short?
It won't be cut short, but I think that we could take a natural break at that point. Or I think if we start early, that may impact some people in regards to employment. So let me look to both. I've got to look at my own schedule as well. Here's the thing, that's a no school day, which was another issue that I had spoken with Cheryl in regards to us having the board meeting on a no school day. That also presents some complications for trustees that have children at home that might not be able to come early. So I would look to see Christina in terms of employment or which one are you at? Jenny in terms of impact with your okay. So do we want to start at noon? At this point we can change it to noon and then if we go later. Tyler?
I'm supposed to be away depending on WestJet. So
Yes, so,
I'm waiting to
if
hear.
WestJet is on strike, you will be here.
I'll be around.
Okay, I guess you're on vacation anyways.
Well, let's see.
Okay. So we will go with the attempt of starting at noon, we'll move into cameras typical, we'll stretch everything up by an hour,
together to complete a wellness grant, and they write down specifically or detail what the grant money would be used for related to wellness. They've been given different categories depending upon the themes throughout the year, but what we found predominantly the funding has been used for has been self-regulation initiatives and now outdoor learning. And so, yeah, every year we use up that funding, and typically we get 11 to 12 schools that apply, and then they're required to do a report at the end of the year, show pictures, and present to the wellness committee around what they've done with the funds to support wellness in their schools.
And then is that the same for and then the nutrition grant is the one from the Alberta government, and you just apply and then give it out.
Thank you. Thanks, Maury. Seeing no other comments, we'll move on to Mike with the Human Resources.
Sure, and I'll just hit obviously the reports there for you. I'll hit a couple of the highlights. Under other highlights, just once again, you can see that Rhonda and Katie were out at the U of L at their career fair for teachers. And then other members, I think all the members of the Human Resources Department got to the YMCA for their job and resource community fair. So really appreciate that the HR department takes the opportunity to get out into the community and connect. It's good for the division. It's good to help attract employees. So certainly appreciate the work that they do there. Kristen, we'll skip to the second page here now. Just a quick update on teacher staffing. So the process is going well so far. As of this morning, since we got back from Easter break, reviewed over 600 contracts with school administration to make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of who we have and what is their FTE in their contracts. And so now that that's done, we'll start to work on continuing contract offers, probationary contract offers, and then we'll get into advertising positions, which should happen hopefully in the next sort of 10 days to 2 weeks. All of that'll happen. Sometimes it can flex a little bit and then things will really get hopping. So right now there's a lot going on behind the scenes to get the work done so we can get the advertisements out, and appreciate all the work particularly that our administrators have done. There is an update on the memorandum of agreement with teachers. I know you all know this, but it's good to mention it publicly that we did, both groups, the board and the teachers, ratified the memorandum of agreement that we signed in March. So once again, a big thank you to everybody who's involved in the negotiating committee. There's a lot of work that goes into that. It's certainly appreciated. And then just a quick update. We had our last session on April 17th. We had a collaborative community day, and we got together with the staff wellness collaborative community that originally met in October. And it was a great opportunity to show them all the feedback that we've received, similar to what we did with the board, have them identify some priorities. And then we actually had some time to really start thinking about some ideas for moving wellness forward. So some great ideas were generated, some things that we've already been doing, but now a real opportunity, the next big phase as we move into next year, is to really be coordinated in the way we approach wellness and start to take a little more of a targeted approach. So pretty exciting for that. And just wanted to say to all the folks who were involved in that collaborative community and all the sessions that we did, their input was greatly appreciated. And also want to say a quick thank you to the board for your willingness to be involved in wellness. I know it's an important part of what you do, and it was appreciated. So thank you. And that's it for me, unless there's questions.
Questions for Mike? We didn't have many questions this month, but I do, from the board, definitely want to thank all three of you for the reports. They're always so in-depth and provide us with a lot of information, and I know that they take your time, so thank you to all of you. Next, we'll move on to superintendent reports. So the first one is the board priorities report. Cheryl.
Right, and that report is there for you. Just a few highlights. I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you to Avis DeCalver, our Director of Finance, who gave the April Division School Council education sessions. She reviewed how funding's allocated, how it's distributed, and the different avenues for feedback, and did a great job with that. So thank you to Avis. This coming Monday, May 1st, we will have Kaysen, our digital wellness educator, and he may be bringing, let's say Brooklyn, no, the social worker in the program with him, Sydney, with them, and that will be the education session for parents this coming Monday. And so, focusing on digital wellness, what is it that they're doing for our schools in the division? They hit the ground running because I was visiting with Kaysen today, and they've had great demand certainly in our schools in terms of doing universal kinds of pieces with classes with teachers. And intervention as well with students and families. So they've been incredibly busy from broad to narrow. And so it's been certainly when a project hits the ground and it's like accessed immediately the first day they're here, you know that it was a project that was certainly one that's well received and needed. Under collaboration with other school authorities section, I just want to say, you know, as you read through there every month, I hope you sort of see the big picture with respect to the amount of work our staff do in terms of connecting with external agencies and trying to provide students with as much wraparound support as possible, and really appreciate Morag Instructional Services and the commitment that they have to spending the time to connect with those external agencies, even though it can be a challenge because everyone's sort of short of help for sure. And I think I might have mentioned, I couldn't remember last month about the Zone 6 partnership application into a collegiate program. And so that's in, and we're waiting with bated breath to see what happens. It's a project with the college. It would see a transformation of one of the college buildings into a space for high school age students and career pathways in the trades. And so that would be a really exciting project if we get it approved. I really think we have a good chance of getting it approved. So it'll be exciting if that is the case. It would be a great campaign launch for somebody, right, to do that. So literacy, numeracy, I know I mentioned last time since our data meetings with all of the schools that Karen, myself, and the literacy numeracy lead teacher had. My goodness, they are being accessed every day and double booked and triple booked in terms of providing support to teachers and classrooms and how to best practice in literacy, numeracy, comprehensive literacy, and numeracy that embeds thinking strategies as well as manipulatives, and focusing on instruction that is informed by assessment. So thank you to those experts in those areas. We've talked a bit about experiential learning already. Certainly, we had the Try a Trade, again, incredibly well accessed and busy. And thank you to Andrew Carl, who works with industry to find locations. I've said many times, and I'll repeat, what an amazing business industry we have in Lethbridge, who opens their doors to invite students in, not only for work experience and RAP, but for evening events like this, so that students have a chance, which it was, the exploratory days, which will be hosted these coming weeks, is also an opportunity for our students to sort of explore the idea of potential industries and careers. Innovation technology, we never sit still. When I say we, I get to just include myself because I'm part of the division, because certainly what an innovative team we have in technology, exploring VM virtual machines and then how that can inform instruction, reviewing our smart notebook software, and looking at, I won't spend the time talking about the change, but certainly Alberta Education had some change with respect to how test security for written examinations. And so Jesse working hard with schools to navigate how we can make that work. In early learning, certainly Rochelle is, at one time I thought, who's ever going to replace Isabel? Well, Rochelle is incredibly connected, well informed, is a major member of the Lethbridge Plays. She's part of that steering committee, and certainly well connected in the world of early education and best practice. Indigenous education, I think we've got the honor night powwow. I don't know when that date is necessarily. Oh, sorry. Yeah, an Indigenous graduation evening. So got those events coming up, and Morag already talked about the wellness. I already mentioned Kathan and Sydney. And in terms of diversity, continued work happens with our English language learner program, and the work of Carmen and Sajan is amazing. And I hope you enjoy the calendar that Sajan puts out once a month and are able to access that. We've got when we look under achievement and innovation, the domain teaching and learning. So sorry, Kristen, I'm skipping around a bit. I skipped a whole bunch. If we just go around to the next green section, there we go. We had our second and final division-wide professional learning day on April 17th. And certainly teachers there participate in the collaborative community of their choice. They're the ones who organize the collaborative communities, assume leadership for those, and sign up for those. And I think that Karen Rancier, our curriculum director, has it down to a fine art in terms of how you organize those and make sure that everyone knows where they're going and what they're doing. So thank you to Karen. And our tech department has been doing a lot of work with our student information system and building the capacity of both our office support people as well as administrators. The ongoing complexity of a student information system never ceases to astonish me. And actually, Jesse Sudlowski, our technology director, will be doing at the admin committee a presentation about helping administrators understand the connection between the student information system and all the other software programs that, that the techies have to have talked to each other with the student information system. And when someone thinks that they're making a little request for a little change, it really goes into that whole network and impacts the student information system. And so it's very complex, and we're very fortunate to have what we do in our schools for sure. And I'm in under inclusion right there. Yep. And so again, I think when we take a look at Jim and Jen and Jackie in terms of what they do for wellness across counseling, Jim in his role as working with students and student transitions and trying to take care of our most at-risk kids, their work is never ending and their commitment is really appreciated. Christine talked about how we didn't get the modular classrooms we were hoping for, unfortunately, but nonetheless, we'll certainly move forward with what it is that we can do in those areas. And teacher induction program, I see we don't have anything under there, but I think I might have cut something off there. Our last session, I want to say thank you to Trish Symes and Karen Rancier, who are the ones who run the teacher induction program. They're Friday afternoons, and this was just an absolutely committed, delightful, sharp, interactive, collaborative group of young teachers that met here all year. Not every Friday, but over the course of a number of Fridays for professional learning, targeting new to the profession teachers. And their last session was on Friday. And so that was great for them to wrap that up. It was sort of a signal of how fast the year is going when that group is having their last session. And if there's not any questions, that's my report.
Questions, I think Christine? Nope. Christina, go ahead.
Always just tired listening to you guys. So big report. Thank you. Thank you so much for all the work on this. You did mention the calendar, the multicultural calendar that goes out. So thank you for that. I did just have a question about how we feel like the implementation of that is going in terms of, because I know that was a newer or like a small adjustment, I think, to some of the communication that was going out from that team. This month we did have Eid and Passover, which are sort of some of those holidays that aren't recognized on our traditional school calendar. And just wondering if there's any feedback about how that awareness is going with schools in terms of recognizing that because of the calendar. Like, is that helping? Have schools been able to adjust and like sort of acknowledge that for students? If that makes sense. Sorry, that's a weird.
And Margot, I'll get you to respond as well, but certainly as I visit the liaison schools that I visit more frequently, I see more and more celebrations of across cultures and recognition of different events. It's exciting to see, and it's amazing. And so certainly I'm seeing it as making a difference because that calendar does go to everybody, like all the staff. And so I think it does begin to, when they see that, people take a look and go, oh, and make some recognition of what it is that they can be thinking about more.
I've had a few conversations with some parents and schools when an event may or may not conflict still, and I think we still have a lot more work to do, and even understanding what does Ramadan do, and if we're offering a hot lunch on that day, what does that look like, right? And I think that education piece is coming along as well. We've still missed a few of the holidays or events, and so we're just populating them as we're being made aware if we don't have that awareness. And the Anti-Racism, Anti-Oppression Committee is meeting tomorrow actually to start to look at procedures for the policy. And so I think there will be a deeper dive just around structures and systems and move beyond just what we want to do to how do we start to look at thoughtfully applying the information that we've got and then informing our system and how we can just continue to be more mindful in this journey of learning.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, I know, because it's certainly just like one of the pieces of the process of supporting learning for all students. So I appreciate the update. And then just a follow-up question, not follow-up, new question. You mentioned the ARIO committee, and I was just wondering if there was any update about the Positive Spaces committee, if there is more of that. I can't remember where we are. Are we at procedures or like a working document or? Yeah.
So we did inform, I think, last meeting that they are up. So the procedures are up as an appendix, so you'll see them there. And we have not met since they've been posted.
I do remember from the last one. I was just trying to remember where I could find it. So thank you.
Not seeing any other comments, so go ahead with the donations and support.
And first, I always have to preface this with, I know we don't have them all here because I know that, some of the schools don't necessarily report the donations to us. So please to sort of recognize those businesses who are so generous in providing support to our schools and say thank you, and that the schools, as you can see, make good use of those and recognize those who aren't on this page, who I know the schools know who those donations and donators have been. So thank you for that. Excellent school showcases. Good to move on. And so Park Meadows Elementary School, it's a small North Side Elementary School, and I love how the report is a visual report because that just speaks to Park Meadows Elementary School. It's a very busy school, lots to offer students certainly, and some of the points they made in there, of course, their pride characteristics, the positivity, resiliency, imaginative dynamism, and empathy. And they speak to that diversity is our strength. And they've been working really hard this year to bring community into the school, to have events that are fun and engaging. And I have to say that is the first elementary ever hip hop dance show that I've ever been to. And it was amazing. They've got just an amazing young fine arts teacher there now who's doing drumming and hip hop and interesting drama productions. So certainly, the kids are really engaged there. And on the second page there, you can see we've got Winston Churchill high school students engaged with the school, and that's an ongoing relationship that was sort of rekindled. Once COVID was over, the high school kids can come in and do different kinds of groups, to different work with the elementary students. They've got their Genius Hour, and of course the grade ones. If you want to have a smile, if you're having a bad day and you want to have a smile, go to Park Meadows Elementary School, look at the best part of me writing projects by grade 1, and you will leave with a smile on your face because what they decide is best about me is what we should all decide is best about me. That's for sure. Certainly a lesson for adults. And the school likes to showcase their professional learning to the community and to the parents. And I've been at school council meetings where they do that. And they've really had huge changes in their makerspace, their learning commons, and added a makerspace to that. And so certainly that's moved a long way. And, thank you to Kathy Canelson downstairs, who certainly provides support in that area. And then we've got Winston Churchill High School. You know, their athletic prowess of the Griffins and Bulldogs is on the first page there, and certainly congratulations to those teams and athletes and who continue to work hard. And we've got our murders in the air. That was a while ago, and that was such a fun production because they let the audience sort of pick the outcome, right? You got to vote on things, and then the play went in the direction. And I wondered, are they really changing the play based on the audience vote? And actually they were, because it was so a lot of fun with that. And actually they just finished their one act plays last week, Friday, Thursday, last week. And so certainly the amazing talent of those students and the winners of that group of one act plays will go to the zone competitions this Friday. Is it this Friday? Go this Friday. So congratulations to those Churchill students. And so this report would have been done before that happened. And, you know, when you think about, like, I'm always just in awe of some of the amazing talent of our students. So we've got 2 students who are finals of the Polar Expressions Publishing National Writing Contest. Now that's thousands of entries going to that contest. So to be finalists in that is quite an accomplishment. Reading through some of the knowledge and employability student programs that the students in there and what they're doing for the community and what they're doing for the school is certainly commendable. And we've got Kane Meltingtowel and Maria Johnson were nominated for Honoring Spirit Award, and we'll be honoring some of those students here next month. The Honoring Spirit Award will be inviting those students here. We've got they're a member of the Interact Club, and Stephen Yang was named one of 36 2023 Loran Scholars. How much is that worth? $100,000. $100,000 scholarship. So you can imagine the competition for that scholarship. And our student, Stephen Lang, we call him ours, was the Churchill student, Stephen Lang, was actually one of those scholars. And so I don't know if you were at the ICE scholarship, he was there because he's the one running the math club. And the math, this math club that started with 3 or 4 students it's like crowded. They can't fit any more kids into the classroom. He's not only incredible, well, clearly a genius level intelligence, but incredibly social and able to attract students to the math club and engage students in everything that's going on. And sorry, Craig, I think you're going to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to say that Loran Scholarship, he has the opportunity to choose 25 different universities in Canada to go to. But that not only is it $100,000, but he gets access to labs that normal kids, and I mean, regular students will not get access, plus tutoring from, direct tutoring from advanced education professors for his degree. I mean, it's an unbelievable scholarship.
Yeah, it's and he's so humble, right? And he's not even, he's humble and not sure what he's going to do. So it's quite an honor to have him as a student in our school division. We've got some stars of the Lethbridge Kiwanis music there. And we had 4 students in the Southwest Regional Skills Canada competition when some 4 students compete, and we had they won some medals there, and that's listed. And so the gold winners go on to the provincial competition. Our archery team did quite well. They were 5th. So 5th out of 11. That's in the top half of the competition. So they did really well. And what a active Taekwondo club they have in Winston Churchill. There's some pictures of them. And of course, as you met him last month, was our Edwin Parr nominee, Jamel, and that banquet's coming up next month, 17th, and where will be honored, and all of his own 6 awards will be there. Any questions?
Seeing no questions, you can move on to Education Week.
Education Week, that's there for you. The theme is Learning Uplifts All. This has been a long-standing tradition. And of course, that week is intended to recognize the amazing work of all of our staff in schools and what it is that they do for children and youth. And so trustees, apples are coming Monday. Okay, so your distribution to your liaison schools can start on Tuesday. And so Kristen will be working hard to get those all organized for your pickup. And of course, if that's, if there's, and you can work with each other if there's sharing or things that you need to do to make that happen. And calendar of events is there. Are there anything that we missed on the calendar of events?
We have Poverty Intervention Committee. I just need to look up the date, sorry. May 16th at 1 p.m.
Thank you. Anything else that we might have missed on the calendar?
Well,
And
oh, sorry.
have
Well,
we
we'll
got-
just change the
Oh.
time for the board meeting on there.
So the May 23rd board meeting will start at 12 o'clock. Am I correct?
At 12, and then I'm just wondering for the Indigenous graduation and the other notes, it said 5:30. This says 6. Perfect. We will get confirmation on that. We'll all go over together anyways, but just for the calendar wise. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. Am I hearing wrestlers?
I think we're hearing something.
I think we're hearing wrestlers out there,
Okay,
maybe.
so we'll have our wrestlers coming in if they are here. Okay. Sounds good. So I would like to welcome Kaylee Lowe, who's going to do a presentation for us on tech. Before we get started, I just want to, and we'll get you to turn your mic on when you do speak. So just, I would like to thank you for taking the time to prepare a presentation to the board. We appreciate public members coming forward to express a concern or perspective in accordance with policy 204.13, public presentations and forums. You have complied with the policy by notifying the board at least 14 days in advance and providing a background and briefing document. You have 15 minutes for your presentation, and I will have our Secretary Treasurer signal you when there are 2 minutes left and advise when the 15 minutes is up and presentation is finished. Do not trip. The board will listen carefully to your presentation and consider what you have provided as information. The board will not be providing a response or engage in dialogue following your presentation. Board members can, should they wish to do so, ask any clarifying questions following the presentation. We will not be providing a written follow-up response, but will respectfully consider your information in our future planning processes and decision-making. So thank you. And if you're ready, then I'll get Christine to start.
Can I just double check that the mouse is going to work for my,
Yeah.
it looks like it's going to need a second to load. Okay. Okay,
Thank you, Kaylee.
thanks. Good afternoon. My name is Kaylee Lowe. My husband and I have 4 children attending school in the Lethbridge Division. My post-secondary education is in nursing, and I've always loved health sciences. As we've navigated the needs of our family, my work as an RN eventually shifted to full-time mom, and my personal learning and study was pulled towards the effects of technology on children and families. I want to thank you for this opportunity to share just a small snippet of what I've been learning. Personally, I believe that parents and educators strive to do the best they can with the knowledge and experiences they have. They work hard to teach and support children. I also believe that there's room for and the need for increased learning about the effects of technology on our physical, emotional, and mental health. With greater understanding, along with ideas and direction on more intentional use of technology, like where and when and for how long it's used, we could boost the well-being of our children and improve the quality of their learning experience. I want to be clear, I don't think technology is bad. It can be a very useful tool. However, I do feel that it should be used intentionally and provided to children in slow, age-appropriate stages. If I handed my 9-year-old the car keys and told her, be careful and have fun, one would assume that she'd end up in an accident. She's not physically or psychologically adapted to handle that responsibility yet. In contrast, I also have a fresh 14-year-old who's been preparing and studying to pass an exam for a learner's license, following which he'll practice driving with an adult for the next 2 years before he's required to pass another exam to drive on his own. In many areas of life, we educate, prepare our children so that they can live a safe and happy existence. Generally speaking, we've welcomed electronics into our homes and classrooms with little educating, preparing, or boundaries in place. And we're now seeing the effects of this. Here are some statistics that reflect the electronic crashes of our day. 53% of children own a smartphone by age 11. On average, children aged 10 to 16 now spend only 12.6 minutes a day on vigorous activity. Whoa, it was scrolling, sorry. In Canada, approximately 12 people die per day by suicide. And 1 in 5 Canadian teens have considered suicide in the last 12 months. 47% of those teens did not talk to anyone about it. 46% of those teens had a formulated plan. And among youth and young adults 15 to 34 years old, suicide is the leading cause of death, second leading cause of death. Okay, sorry, I'm going to get to the right slide. Over a 30-year span, ADHD has increased by 800%. 1 in every 7.5 teens 13 to 17 years old reported seeing pornography before the age of 10. 73% of teens have been exposed to pornography either accidentally or on purpose. Less than half of those teen respondents had discussed pornography with a trusted adult. 41% of those teens reported having seen pornography during the school day, and almost half of those kids were on a school-owned device. One of our own children was accidentally exposed to pornography while on a school iPad in elementary school. 82% of pornographic videos have violence, hitting, choking, they're physically abusive, and have depictions of rape. 1 in 3 teens have seen non-consensual shared nudes. 1 out of 7 9 to 12-year-olds shared their own nude image in 2020. Children can become victims of online grooming in as little as 17 minutes. And reports of online child sexual abuse imagery have increased by 900,000% from 1998 to 2021. Our world is falling apart. So how do we combat this? In my mind, it's a parental responsibility to teach healthy tech habits. However, in reality, teachers and administrators are in the trenches fighting alongside parents to help our kids become more intentional with their tech. Part of my personal mission is to help educate parents, but our children spend the bulk of their day in school. So I'm here today with suggestions that I believe would benefit both teachers and students. First, I'll share research on how technology affects the developing brain. Second, I'll share research on the impacts of technology on classroom learning. And lastly, I'll share suggestions for a division-wide policy that would promote more intentional use of technology to enhance the digital well-being of students. The brain is a complex and incredible part of the human body. For girls, the brain reaches full maturity by age about 22, and for males, age 25. In our teen years, there's rapid growth, and that process starts from the back of the brain to the front. And here's where it gets tricky. The back of the brain is where our pleasure centers are. When you're enjoying something, the hormone dopamine is released and you want more. Dr. Jason Carroll uses this analogy. If your brain were a car, the back would be the gas pedal, and at the front of the brain, or your frontal cortex, would be your brakes. The frontal cortex is where we find the ability to reason, to make decisions, to use logic, and our conscience. It's responsible for impulse control, emotional regulation, and task completion. So our children or our students are at a stage where their brain is developed enough to have a gas pedal, but not the brakes. This is why we can't expect our kids to think and act like an adult when it comes to using tech. As mentioned, dopamine is the feel-good hormone. It happens in the body naturally, like from eating or intercourse. This reward pathway of the brain is activated, thus telling the individual to repeat what they did. When our body creates dopamine naturally, it only comes after some effort and delay, and it generally serves as a survival function. A natural dopamine release has a natural progression and decline. For example, if we're eating a chocolate cake, we prepare the cake, we wait for the cake to bake, we can smell the cake, we taste it, and then we have to digest it. So we have a natural increase and a natural decrease in our dopamine levels. This is normal and healthy. With any form of interactive, handheld, or touchscreen devices, so I'm talking about cell phones, kindergarten kids on iPads, video games, or scrolling social media, we're learning that they can be so stimulating to the brain that we get instant and high hits of dopamine. The body goes into a state of fight or flight, which gives us an adrenaline rush with continuous and high surges of dopamine levels, which makes a person want it more. Sometimes the body is in this state of fight or flight for hours, and this rewires the pathways of our brain and can lead to addiction. When we take the screen away, the dopamine drops dramatically, and a child any age can become weepy, impulsive, restless, angry, or throw a tantrum. And this is withdrawal. It's as though the sudden fall in dopamine causes the brain to short circuit. Here's some examples of increased dopamine levels. When we eat a craving food, it increases by 50%. Intercourse is a 100% increase. Video games from 1998, and they've come a long way since then, increases also 100%. Snorting cocaine is a 350% increase, and ingesting crystal meth is 1,200% increase of dopamine. When the brain gets used to receiving high hits of dopamine, then it starts to make less dopamine naturally. And then normal life starts to feel very dull because the body needs higher amounts of dopamine to get that same feel-good feeling. This is why kids start to lose interest in outdoor activities or in sports or in-person friendships. They don't know it, but they're craving the high, fast hits of dopamine. Dr. Dunkley wrote, "When a child reports finding non-screen activities boring, this should be a red flag to parents and educators. It means the child's brain has become used to an unnaturally high level of stimulation. And when the body is repeatedly enduring a fight or flight response, but it isn't actually expending energy, so like sitting and playing Minecraft, then it's difficult to regulate to a calm state." There have been studies with brain imaging research that conclusively show that excessive screen exposure can neurologically damage a young person's developing brain in the same way cocaine addiction can. So an image of a child's brain on tech looks like a brain on drugs. And what's more, an ever-increasing amount of clinical research correlates screen tech with psychiatric disorders like ADHD, addiction, anxiety, depression, increased aggression, and even psychosis. So let's look specifically at the effects of screen time in the classroom. I've compiled a point form list with just a very small portion of what you'll find in the resources I've provided. Screen time negatively impacts test scores, and in some cases, students score an entire grade level lower when using a device during all or most of their classes. Screens isolate students from their teachers and their peers, so students disengage from face-to-face connections and eye contact. This impedes social and emotional development. Screen time compromises creativity. It disrupts sleep. It causes eye problems and affects our physical and mental health. When students read printed text versus electronic text, research shows that they often comprehend and retain more information, engage in deeper and more fluid reading. They're more likely to enjoy reading and be above average readers. They test higher and they're able to focus better. Specifically regarding cell phones in the classroom, studies show that even the mere presence of these devices in the classroom reduces available cognitive capacity. The attention and energy that it takes not to check a phone seems to cause brain drain. These are a few benefits of eliminating smartphones use during an academic day. It builds stronger and healthier interpersonal relationships. It increases test scores up to 14% among lowest achieving students, increases positive mental health. It decreases exposure to pornography. It decreases cyberbullying. It increases grade honesty. 65% of students admit to seeing another student use a smartphone to cheat on a test, and it decreases behavioral incidences. It should also be noted that the tech innovators and the creators of these multi-billion-dollar empires, they're the ones selling the tech. They're also the ones who send their own children to a low-tech or no-tech school. Dr. Victoria Dunkley, who's a psychiatrist and screen time expert, wrote a book called Reset Your Child's Brain, and she wrote, regarding the use of technology in education, it may appear that there's a division of scientific opinion regarding the risks versus benefits. However, despite much hype and many promises, there is yet no solid evidence that educational software enhances learning or brain development, while there is increasingly clear evidence that computer use may hamper both. Meanwhile, virtually all positive research studies are industry funded. Educational policymakers are often misled by such research, whose decisions trickle down to school administrators, who then buy software and licensing agreements, and so it goes. So with all of this information in mind, I have 3 recommendations. Number 1, have a division-wide policy that follows the structure of a Way for the Day policy initiated by Dr. Delaney Rustin. This would mean that families who choose to send a cell phone to school with their child would be required to keep the device physically off their bodies and kept in their lockers from the start till the end of the school day. This includes their breaks. There would be no cell phone use during school hours. There are more details and examples of this policy in the provided resources. Many schools are seeing huge benefits with this structure. And a few years ago, Superintendent Dan Boehm from Michigan implemented this in his division. After only 10 weeks of living with this new smartphone policy, he lost track of the positive feedback from his students. He said that he's never seen one change have such an impact so quickly. One grade 8 student shared that before the policy, she spent over an hour getting ready every morning. All of her friends had cell phones and she never knew when one of them would whip out their phone and take a picture. She said this, I felt constant daily pressure to look a certain way so that I felt pretty in pictures. No blemishes. I wanted to look perfect. Now, without phones being used by everyone, the pressure is off. There's nothing to worry about and I can be more natural. I can finally be me. And one study estimated that the academic gains of banning phones were the equivalent of adding 5 days to the school year. As for other tech in our classrooms, I would suggest that the division implements the EdTech Triangle from everyschool.org. This framework would help teachers navigate using technology with more intention. The guidelines would help them determine what and how much laptop or iPad use according to the age of the students. Again, the details can be found in the provided reference list and emails that was sent. And lastly, I would suggest finding ways to educate or increase understanding of digital wellness to our students, parents, and school staff. The Every School website defines digital wellness as an intentional state of engagement with the digital world that does not interfere, but instead supports mental, physical, and social health. We often hear about digital citizenship, which is important. However, I believe that digital wellness is crucial to the success of our students in living up to this school division's vision statement, to be learners that are innovative thinkers who are successful, confident, respectful, and caring. And finally, I want to share this Post-it note. Months ago, I was waiting in the halls of one of our middle schools, and I wandered past a whiteboard with a question written in large writing, how do you de-stress? And surrounding it, there was multiple Post-it notes written by students. Lots of them had helpful ideas. but a startling number looks similar to this one. Quote, "The only thing that helps me distress is distracting my brain by going online. I know that it's avoiding the real issue, but it really makes me feel more calm. Our youth need our help, and it's time for us to engage in this electronic wrestle. Let's work to educate families, create digital boundaries in our schools, and use our technology more intentionally. I truly believe it can make a difference, and I thank you for your time."
Thank you, Kaylee. Didn't know we had an audience behind us. So.
Wrestlers are here.
Excellent.
Noisy wrestlers.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you, Kaylee. Just stay there for a second. I'll just ask if there are any clarifying questions from any of our board members. Seeing none, I just want to say thank you very much for coming in and meeting with us as a board and providing the presentation. Look forward to the work that our division does do in regards to digital wellness, and your information is important for us to take into consideration for sure. So
Great. Thank you.
And thank you to your support. Yep, go ahead.
Just to point out to trustees, Kristen did forward an email to you yesterday or earlier today that had a lot of the links to the resources that are referenced in Kaylee's presentation. So if you're looking for those, that's where they are.
Thank you. So next, we will move on to recognition of our provincial champions in wrestling. So I believe both of the students are from LCI. Is that correct?
Just text us said he's unable. Nolan
So Nolan
Oh.
will be here.
Nolan will be here.
Okay,
Sorry.
so you're not one of the wrestlers?
He's right. No,
Okay.
he's here.
She's the
Right.
emotional support. Perfect. Okay.
Riders.
Yes. Okay.
All
So we'll
right.
just recognize Ryder then, as well as Nolan, but we'll give the certificate. Excellent, thank you. So how are we doing for time? We're actually on time. I know. I'm like, look at this go. Perfect. So 9.1 is policy review. And Craig, are you ready? I got to scroll in my. You need to turn your mic on for us. Thanks.
The policy committee met and reviewed the following policies. We did 501.7, 502.5, and 802.2. And as part of our thing, we also indicated where we thought the policy should fit in. It is a policy or a procedure, but we reviewed it anyway. So 501.7 non-resident students, and I just remind me, the red is we deleted, or is the red added, Cheryl? I can never remember.
The red is added,
Yeah.
and in the bubbles to the right, it'll tell you if anything was deleted, it will make note of that to the
Okay,
right.
thank you. Anyway, as you can see, we've updated it so that it indicates we've added educational opportunities in the division. Non-residents must first meet all the requirements according to federal, provincial governments, Alberta Education Act, and Alberta Educational Funding Manual. Non-residents who are from Alberta, we added the words guardian or independent student, and also under non-resident students who are not from Canadian students who are not from Alberta, we added it who are here without a parent or guardian, but are living in Lethbridge with a custodian or relative. And their parents or guardians do not reside in Alberta. And we just made some things where it's capitalized in that. And then 3.3 was a new one where we added the different types of non-resident students that could be coming here. And then on 4, out-of-country students must apply for admission, and students who are required to pay tuition must apply for admission through the Division International Services Office and are required to pay an application fee. And you now have the following references. And if my memory serves me correctly, we felt that this particular thing should be a procedure more than a policy, because it just follows the Education Act and the government rules. So I would, are there any questions on that particular policy?
Cheryl and then Christina.
And so I just wanted to note how we've been patterning this year is we're still approving them as a policy, but certainly as a member of the policy committee, I'm making note of all of when the board is finished reviewing all of the policies, it will have been noted, the recommendations by this policy committee about which ones should next year move into procedure when the board is at the point of making those decisions. So.
Okay, Christina.
Just on the policy versus procedure on this one. I guess I'm not sure what, I think I would be more inclined to see it continue as a policy for the parts that are around, like, just ensuring that we do have at least some board oversight, ensuring like safety of children who are from out of country. Just these sort of, I worry about our responsibility around like the complexity of international students or non-resident students, and just wondering if a lot of this is absolutely procedure, like a lot of this is not board work at all. But I just wonder where our role stops in terms of the levying of fees in particular, and like the safety of students who can be more vulnerable given that they're non-resident in some cases, like without a official guardian here, things like that. Just I think there's maybe a halfway point, at which point it's no longer a policy.
Craig, it's in response.
Yes.
Okay, 'cause Jenny, yours is in response to that, or can you? Okay, go ahead, Craig.
Well, basically, any student that's a member of our division, whether they're a resident or non-resident, would be protected by the policies on safe and caring schools. I think there's about 5 or 6 policies that would say if you're in the school division, you're protected under those policies. And really, this is just about the funding and the fee, and just saying, here's the rules that the Alberta government's put down. We don't really change any of those, but we do make sure, and I think it was brought up at our policy meeting, we do make sure that any student in our division is covered under all of the other policies. And so we could put references, if so choose, about the different policies protecting students. But it really doesn't have anything to do with this particular part, because once they've paid their tuition, they're part of our division and we're responsible for them.
I mean, we could explicitly state if it were to move to a procedure that all Lethbridge School Division policies are applicable to international students. I think that's part of their agreement, isn't it, Trish, already?
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. I don't even know that it needs to be referenced. I certainly understand they're covered by all of our other student policies. I think I'm just trying to give the conversation as we move things potentially out of policy, just giving it due consideration before we move them. So.
Trish has something on this one, and then I'll move on to Jenny.
Actually, it's just a comment that you made about guardianship as well. So right now I am the legal guardian for international students, and next year Canada Homestay will be the legal guardian for all students. So they do have somebody here that takes care of it.
Thank you. Jenny.
I just wanted to clarify intention here. The recommendation is to adopt the revisions to the policy. Are we also recommending moving this to procedure, or is that just conversational at this point and decision will be made at a later point? Am I understanding that correctly?
Right. So if I'm understanding the board's intent of working through policies this year, both when you review policies as a board and as the policy committee reviews policies, and Craig always wraps up every policy with, and do you think this should be a procedure or a policy? And they give their perspective of that. And then we make note of that, and then Craig makes note of that to you. I make note of that in my notes, but that's not the decision today. The decision is for approval of the policy as revised, right? But only noted that the committee, when the board decides to review the full body of policies, has made that recommendation, but that's not a change today.
And if you had strong words, because we have had ones that have come as a recommendation to change it, and as a board, we've said, no, thank you, and kind of sent it back and had the committee had a conversation. And so if you do have strong pieces in that regard, then this would be the time to address that as well. So not that you won't have a future time, but yeah. Okay.
So I would move that we accept policy 5017, non-resident students, as amended.
Okay. Further discussion? Go ahead, Tyler.
I just struggled with the wording under 3.1, with the way it's worded with the parent, guardian, independent student who ordinarily resides in Alberta. Anyways, I think it might make more sense, at least it does to me, if we change it around a little bit to say this category would include students with a parent / guardian or independent student from anywhere in Alberta. Move it up there. It reads funny to me. So this category would include students with a parent or guardian, parent / guardian or independent student, and then from anywhere in Alberta. So, but basically you just take the parent / guardian or independent students and slide it between the first sentence between students and from. That makes sense.
Christina.
Oh, I'm good. That's yeah.
And then for the 3.3, is that language from a document? The following statuses, the list of status, is that from a document specifically? Just landed immigrant is not regularly used anymore typically. So it may be still old language from an old document, yeah. Okay, okay.
It's all.
Oh, that's the deleted part.
Yeah, it's.
Well, right now it's it's still listed as a status. Temporary resident, landed immigrant, visiting student, or exchange student. So rather than defining them, because those are changing all the time,
Mhm.
Trish, we still have
They're still listed. Just the-
landed immigrant. Which one did you say? Sorry.
just the landed immigrant, and this might be one of those situations where I'm asking about something that's like copy pasted from a document. It's typically referred to like federally as permanent resident.
If I'm remembering, I, that came from the funding manual, I think.
Yeah, so if it's from a manual, ignore me.
Seeing no further discussion, you need to amend your motion.
Well, yeah, we'll just, a friendly amendment, so I don't think we need, and it doesn't change the purpose of the document, so we'll just accept it
Okay.
and move on with the vote, I guess.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion, those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you, and move on to the next one, please, Craig.
Or sorry, 502.5. What we've just changed is basically just coming in line with the provincial government rules. And I think we, instead of one of the discussions that we had, and I think it's an important one, is that we decided not to put numbers in there because we know the provincial government can change. So to make the policy long lasting, we just said, we'll just prescribe it by the Alberta government. So, because it could change depending on who the government is. And of course, then we also added with the issuance of public transport passes managed by the Division Transportation Coordinator. And we added breakdown road as part of the problems that might, in the event of delays in transporting students home, such as a school bus, breakdown road conditions, or a return to school for disciplinary measures, the bus driver, and it just kind of indicates what the rules are. If a student personnel cannot be reached, the dispatcher shall contact the education center. Communication regarding the disruption will be provided to parents. And also because we do own some buses, I think, with the high schools mainly. So we had to add on divisional owned buses shall adhere to the guidelines also. And I think we decided to leave this as a policy, didn't we? Yeah. So any questions on that? It's pretty straightforward. We're just updating everything.
Go ahead.
So then I move that we adopt the 502.5 student transportation / busing for as amended.
Any further comments, conversation? Those in favor? And that's carried.
Might add that I think busing is spelled wrong, isn't it? Up in the top, BUSSING. Oh, can be? Okay. All right. Yeah, typically one S. I just noticed that. Yeah. And one S is, yeah. 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 I just noticed that, so. And I'm terrible at spelling, so, but I've had to put that word in so many times in a crossword that I sort of remember that. The next one is 802.2, school fees. And I think the biggest change is we deleted it from student to school fees. There really are no other changes. Well, there are some in the regulations. Schools may consult with parents, and then we put just, again, just kind of keeping all of our policies with the same language, guardians to establish. Fees may be waived by the principal or administrative designate. There's another one that can happen, because a lot of times it's the vice principal or someone that's doing that. And for we added the guardians and independent students, and guardians are independent students there. And a dispute recognition, just adding the words so that we're consistent throughout our policies. And the references are down there with the new Alberta Education Act and the Alberta Education School Fees Regulation. And this one we felt should stay as a policy because it involves money. And we're required to do it. Yes, it's a requirement of governance for every board about that. So any questions on that?
Christina.
In point 10, where you've added guardians, do you also want to add the independent students as part of
Yes,
the
we
alignment
should.
of that?
Yeah. Thank you. And that would be considered a friendly amendment. It's keeping everything the same. So any other, then I would move that we adopt policy 802.2 school fees as amended.
No further comments or questions. Those in favor? And that's carried.
Okay, and I'd just like at this time, let the board know how hard that committee does work, and there's lots of input. And it's really fun. It's nice to be there and listen to the discussion, especially from the CUPE members, from the administration, and from the parent reps. So just appreciate their input on all of these policies.
Thank you. Thanks, Trish. So next we have rates for division meal allowances. Christina Larkin.
So the memo is before you as part of the annual budget process and board budget committee. It came up that the division meal allowances were insufficient compared to other school divisions, as well as assessments on just general costs. And so I've presented recommended rates on behalf of the board budget committee and the attendees of the meeting. Any questions?
Tyler.
I just had one in regard to the effective date. I didn't understand August. I thought either, let's see, you can give me
There's
an
no
answer.
reason.
I thought either it would be
Christine.
good now or September 1, so.
Go ahead,
Go ahead.
Christine.
Well, you can make it September 1 if you want. The reason we did move it out a bit, like from effective, like right away, is that we have to get our forms and everything changed and make sure the processes are in place so that we're appropriately tracking it if someone puts in a claim. August 1st is because there's a lot of travel. There is a lot of travel that happens in the summer or at beginning of August for administrative business and that sort of thing. And so that's why we put August 1st, but you could easily make it September if that's the wish of the board. We just did need time so that we can make sure we're getting it in place properly, all the forms and procedures and that doesn't change.
Paperwork is the reason.
Sorry, Christina, I couldn't hear you.
Said paperwork is the reason.
Yeah.
Are you,
Any
is that,
other?
do you have a suggestion?
Well, no, just the way budget runs September 1. So normally you do it September 1, but it's fine if it's August, if there's reasons that we put it there, that's fine. I just.
The
yeah,
budget person said
when-
August, so.
So that's fine. Yeah, I'm good with it.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, did you want to make a motion then?
I'd like to move that the board approve an increase to the division meal allowance as indicated above, effective August 1st, 2023.
Perfect. And those in favor? And that's carried. And next is use of technology. Jenny.
This is just fairly simple, but a not a simple topic, a very important topic. And timing is good with our presentation this month and last month. I think it's a conversation that we've heard more and more. And with that increased frequency, it's something we've identified as a board as one of our areas to focus on and named in our priorities. And so with this increased communication from parents, we've heard from administrators, students themselves, staff, all of them requesting, or not requesting, I would just say communicating the importance of supporting safe and healthy practices for technology in schools. And so in response to that, my recommendation is that as board members, we work with our shareholders, division staff, as well as school staff, to form a subcommittee to work collaboratively with our digital wellness coordinator to develop belief statements and guiding principles regarding technology use in schools.
So I'll open it for discussion and comments. Craig?
I like it, but I probably would use the word ad hoc committee instead of a subcommittee because it's not going to be I mean, it's just a committee to start stuff, to get stuff going. So if you don't mind, that would prefer to me.
Morag?
It's the digital wellness teacher, not coordinator. So really important. There's a different role and responsibility and level of responsibility. But given that the digital wellness portfolio really does fall under wellness, it would make sense to me for it to go through the wellness committee and a subcommittee be formed there.
Jenny?
I would look to the board for their thoughts on Morag's suggestion to have it as a subcommittee under the wellness committee, or Craig's suggestion to have it as an ad hoc committee. I would look to the board for their response.
Craig?
Since we have a wellness committee, that's fine with me if it's a subcommittee of that wellness committee, as long as there's representatives from parents and all of the stakeholders. I would accept that instead of an ad hoc.
Other discussion or comments? Christina?
I guess I'm curious about, I agree. I'm glad to have a conversation about tech. I think that's important. I think it's come up a lot here, right? It's been very prevalent. I'm curious about, I feel like there's things I don't know as a board member about maybe where the Digital Wellness Project is aiming right now, like what is already on the go. And is that the intention of finding that out as part of this subcommittee? Largely, okay. Yeah.
Sorry, I can respond. Sorry. Yeah, that's part of it for me too. Is just the intention of this is to be supportive, responsive to each of these levels of people that we've been hearing from, and to be involved and engaged with the process, not to drive the process. And so wherever the process is at is just to be supportive in that and to help the process along and to be responsive in showing that commitment and taking that time, prioritizing this, making the effort.
Craig?
Would the end result be a policy that might come forward or a procedure that might come forward for the division? Is that sort of where you see this going so that we have a consistent approach to all of our schools on technology?
Jenny?
I think that would be something we would develop through the process. I was intentional in my choice of words in saying belief statements and guiding principles, and hesitant to use the word policy or procedure because I'm hesitant to be heavy-handed in things that are often chosen at school level base. And so I am open to the process developing what it develops, but at this point, I didn't make the motion that way with intention.
And I think for me, I appreciate you bringing this forward. I think a number of trustees have certainly heard messaging from our parent community for sure in regards to the guiding piece. I wouldn't be comfortable if it did have that it would be policies, because I do hear and I know that middle schools, they have taken upon themselves to put some pieces in place already for our middle school students. I think that I would rather take recommendations from this committee as to what direction to go of what would work best rather than that, like you said, that heavy hand, and look at what will work for our stakeholder groups, including our schools, and what is already working, right? So for me, I wouldn't have been in approval if it was policy in there, but I do in regards to the piece and how we worded, but just that committee piece that would look at making some recommendations to come forward on the belief statements and the guiding principles. I have Mike and then Morag.
And just for clarification, there is actually already a policy, 607.4, and it clearly outlines the school's responsibilities in it in relation to this. So I would certainly agree that policy isn't necessarily the place to start, but might be an outcome of that. And I think, and just give my 2 cents, I think it is important to engage in consultation, conversation. What does this actually look like? And the reality is we already have a policy, but it's nobody references. I was actually looking it up because I'm like, I know we have a policy on this. Hasn't been updated since 2016. That tells you something there as well. So I think there's lots of opportunities, but there is already a policy in place. And I think the question is, what does an engagement process look like? So,
Morag and then Christine.
I think what I'm hearing is what's happening with digital wellness in our division. And so I'd like to recommend that Kaysen and his fine comrade Sydney come and do a little presentation to the board in the next month to update them on all the great work they're doing.
Thanks, Morag. And I will remind all trustees that you are welcome to come to the DSC meeting on Monday. I think it's 6:30 he'll be presenting as well. It will only be a short half hour, but it is like a little bit of a snippet to the world that Kaysen has embarked upon with our division. Christine.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Jenny, for bringing this forward. This has been a concern for quite a while, and I am 100% in support of this, and I applaud it. And I do appreciate your focus on developing those belief statements and those guiding principles, because you're right, we do have that policy, but what is the culture behind it, and what are the values that drive us to enact that policy and work well in the nuances that we want, right? Those skills that we want our kids to have, the wellness, the mental wellness, the physical wellness, but also the learning and how it impacts learning. So I am supportive of it going through the wellness committee or a separate ad hoc committee, whichever works best. Whichever works best. One thing that I would ask is that even though it does involve several stakeholders, staff, parents, community members, I would ask for significant student voice in this. I would really be interested in hearing what they want. I know I've had students come and speak with me and say, we want it, we can't do it ourselves, and we need help. And so I would like to have a significant amount of student voice in this process.
Craig?
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting that we become heavy-handed, but one of the problems I see is if we allow schools to do their own thing, then we have a mishmash of stuff going on in the division. And something as important as technology, especially about the wellness of kids. And we have a policy that maybe needs to be updated based on the subcommittee that's going to look at it, is that we do need an overarching policy to ensure that the well-being and safe and caring schools continues. And so I don't think it'd be heavy-handed. It's just that I'm willing to look at the development of it and hear recommendations from the subcommittee back to the wellness committee that would go back to the policy committee and the board to ensure that we're consistent and we look at the importance of the wellness of our children.
Cheryl.
Sorry, Marek, I'm going to recommend otherwise that it fall under Wellness Committee. The board has this as a priority under governance. The board added this to the strategic planning under instruction as well as under inclusion. And so that's 3 areas that the board has this as a priority in your assurance plan for 23-24. I know that because I was just sort of reviewing the feedback from administrators. And so because really it's about the sequential steps of the board being fully informed. So before you can develop belief statements and guiding principles, is the board fully aware of what's happening in schools? Are we making some assumptions about what's happening in schools? So first, an assessment of how is technology being used in schools, and that can come by through the voice of students, that can come through staff. So sort of almost like a survey of, how is technology being used? What purpose is it serving? So if we're talking about purposeful, responsible use of technology, I think it has to start with there. And then gathering the feedback from parents, students, staff about, well, what do we believe about use of technology in schools? Then I think that part of the conversation also needs to be with parents in terms of what is the division's responsibility and what's parental responsibility. Use of technology, a school division will never solve that social issue ever in isolation, because if we're really honest with ourselves, this is primarily an out of school issue, primarily. And so when I take a look at all of our middle schools right now, not all, but 3 of our middle schools who don't have use of cell phones in classrooms right now, that's not to say we don't have as many issues coming out of social media and cell phone use. That's because it's happening outside of school. So parents are a really critical partner in this, and an ad hoc committee then can move forward strategies. And it's not fair to the wellness committee to have to assume those responsibilities, right? Because I think an ad hoc committee then has to have people who sort of burden the responsibility of doing that kind of work and coming back to the board and reporting to the board as an ad hoc committee. So that would be my recommendation on that, because it is a fairly that priority is mentioned by the board 3 times in your upcoming plan.
So with that, I'll turn it back to Jenny.
I appreciate everyone's comments and thoughts and made notes on a lot of what was shared, and appreciate the collective initiative here. I appreciate your comments, Cheryl, and had some of the same thoughts that this is what I anticipate will be a little bit of an involved initiative. And to put that onto another committee, I'm not sure if that is fair to them. And then I'm also not totally familiar with their terms of reference, whether this would be limited by that or fit under that. But if we're able to make an ad hoc committee, it allows us perhaps more freedom to mold it the way we need it to be, and to shape it to accomplish what we need it to accomplish. I also appreciate the brief outline of the potential strategy and how to approach it. And in thinking about this, I agree there's a lot of space at the beginning here for becoming informed and becoming educated, and in gathering information and understanding the scope of what we're talking about. And then there's a lot of space for things like roundtable discussions and surveys, and it seems involved, I think, before we're going to come out with the end goal, whether that ends up being belief statements or guiding principles. I think it's a safe place for us to start for this recommendation and allow it to develop as it will naturally develop, I think.
So with that, you do have this as an action item. So were you wanting to make a motion? Okay, go ahead.
It is recommended that board members work with shareholders, staff, and division representation to form an ad hoc committee to work collaboratively with our digital wellness teacher to develop belief statements and guiding principles regarding technology use in schools.
You need to use your mic. Cheryl, go ahead.
I'm thinking, just to clarify, I believe that Kaysen would be part of the process as the digital wellness teacher, but certainly the way that it's worded now would make Kaysen one of the sort of responsible for this, right? And so just a recommendation that it could be something like form an ad hoc committee to explore the use of technology in schools and bring strategies and actions to the board. Because as you suggest, you don't even know if it's going to be belief statements yet. Do you know what I'm saying? To form an ad hoc committee for the purpose of exploring the use of technologies in schools and recommending strategies to the board. And one of those strategies could end up being belief statements. It could end up being policy. It could end up being revisions to this policy. It could end up being parameters or safety nets or wellness initiative. But certainly, Kaysen's going to be part of that. But it certainly wouldn't be his role because it would sound like he's leading it.
Christine?
And just to speak to your point, I know you want to the point of getting shareholder staff and everybody involved. That would be done in the terms of reference of the ad hoc committee. That you'd say the committee composition will be, how many parents or how many staff, how many blah blah blah. And so that's how you'll get your broad perspective in that committee.
So did you want to amend the motion that you
Sure.
stated?
I'll just clarify from Christine. Sorry. Oh, would you then recommend that we just maybe amend this to say recommended that board members form an ad hoc committee? And we don't need to name. Okay.
Yeah, I think what Cheryl had outlined is recommended that the board form an ad hoc committee for the purpose of exploring the use of technologies in schools and to recommend strategies, bring recommended strategies to the board. Yeah.
I'm a little bit hesitant I would like our intention to be to develop something concrete. So develop belief statements and guiding principles. I'm curious feedback on removing those words or in keeping those words. Feelings around the table. If I can ask that for feedback.
Christina?
I appreciate your intention with those. I appreciate the thoughtfulness that you put in to not say necessarily like a policy or like, and I can hear the intentionality. I would be more in favor of removing even those words, just to go in really good faith around like being really open to the many versions that might emerge around strategies, knowing that we have other strategies currently coming out through the Digital Wellness Project, and we have this policy that it allows us as the board members to come in really with a curiosity to what strategies might come forward. Personally, that would be my perspective.
Jenny?
I did pull those words out of our board strategic planning. That was something we had said was belief statements and guiding principles, because we were looking to provide structure. And so I like very broad framework structure, but those were words that we did as a board come up with.
Cheryl?
And that you're right, and that's why I made reference to the board has this in the assurance plan, but that wouldn't necessarily be the only or absolutely central. You'll be curious, that certainly is something that you're going to do as part of your strategic planning. If you want the ad hoc committee to be have bigger intent than that, right, or more open intent than belief statements and guiding principles, because it could be many other things that as the ad hoc committee you decide to do, then you're not limited by that. And so, and in terms of membership, whoever the board member is there and administration that you're going to assign to that would make some terms of reference in terms of membership, how many parents, how many students, how many, and all of those would be part of your terms of reference. And then if it's to explore, one of the first things you might do is, first of all, find out what's happening. And then it might be, well, you know what, our strategic plan says we're supposed to, so do some belief statements, how are we going to do that? What's their strategies for that? So you're right. It's absolutely critical to be intentional and purposeful. But sometimes when you're trying to be purposeful, you're also limiting yourself.
I did have Tyler's hand up earlier. Sorry, Tyler and then Christina.
Yeah, just before you restate the motion, I think you also have to, I don't know, we've kind of got into these recommendations that come down. Normally, and maybe I'm wrong, in my mind, when you have a recommendation, it's recommended that the board receive like the financial report. We just receive it. I think you need to say that you're moving that we do this. Just in the wording, when you do it, you need to have an actual motion on the floor, and a recommendation, I don't believe is a motion. So just for future, when we write these up, I may be wrong. I don't know, someone who knows better, but I think that's how it should go. And then I'm not sure if you still have shareholders in your motion or not.
Stakeholders.
Yeah, stakeholders would be
Not
a better word
shareholders.
than shareholders. If
Okay.
you,
And then Christina. Yeah. Christina.
Just a little offer of language, perhaps to like sort of meet both might be to bring forward where do we land? To bring forward strategies, which may include belief statements and guiding principles, which may offer like what you're looking for in terms of like trying to show your commitment to what we had talked about, but doesn't limit you to those being necessarily even included if we end up not needing those, like if we feel like that's covered. So just may include, love that as a.
Yeah. Okay, Jenny. Are you wanting to make an amendment to the motion you have on the floor? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I move that the board form an ad hoc committee for the purpose of exploring the use of technology in schools and recommending strategies to the board, which may include the development of belief statements and guiding principles. Thank you, everyone.
Any further discussion? Tyler.
I think you should probably still have, I couldn't remember the start, but I think you probably still should have regarding use of technology. Because you've just kind of said we're going to develop belief statements and guiding principles, but we need to know what those relate to. Yeah, just read it again, because I think you were missing the part in the end.
Okay, let me read it again. I move that board members form an ad hoc committee for the purpose of exploring the use of technology in schools and recommending strategies to the board, which may include the development of belief statements and guiding principles. Do you want me to repeat it regarding technology use in schools?
Yep.
Okay.
Kristen, you're good? Okay. She's the one that we need to make sure has it, so. Okay, any further discussion? And those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Yeah. Definitely important. So next we have 9.4. So this was the addition, and I know that our online community at the beginning of our meeting didn't necessarily hear everything, so they may not know some of these additions that are being added. So 9.4, and I got to grab is the memo from myself, funding for displaced students, refugee students, and refugee claimants, position statement, emergent position statement. So in your package, I have included, I'd been approached from Edmonton Public and had conversation in regards to this emergent resolution that they'd like to take forward to the spring general meeting for Alberta School Boards Association. And they've discussed it back in March and April at their board meeting. I don't believe in reviewing this with Cheryl that we necessarily need to make much for recommendations in terms of any changes. They've done quite a bit of research, so that information has been provided for you. And they would like us to second that for them. So I'm looking for us to approve this and second that. So Christina, would you like to make the motion?
Sure. Yeah, just have two comments first.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, it's fine. Obviously strongly in favor. I think we've spoken about this as a board a number of times. I think just in ourselves preparing, if we could maybe have it made available to us from executive council, the number of students that are in our division that might be impacted, or like a general sense, because I think we've talked about it in a couple of reports recently of high numbers of intakes and reviewing our intake process and things, just so that we're prepared when we do second. I'm sorry, we need just a motion of that we would second.
That we support this emergent position statement and
Was there an
provide our
extra? Oh, here
seconding
it is. Sorry,
to,
I
yeah.
found it.
And the wording may be wrong, like
I move that we support this emergent position statement from Edmonton Public Schools, as well as agree to be the seconder of the motion as this impacts the division and students within our division in similar ways identified in the EPS background information.
Thank you. Further discussion? And I think it's important when Christina said for us to have our local numbers, just because when I do go to meetings, whether we're at the meeting with the city or Economic Development Lethbridge or Chamber of Commerce, that we can represent this with our local numbers and that we're able to let people know that this is what we're advocating for. I know as a board, we've certainly had discussions in regards to having the funding that's necessary to support all of our students. So Tyler and then Christine.
I was just very nitpicky today, I guess. But in the motion, it just needs to have what the emergent position is, the name of it. It has to have because we can't just say we're supporting a motion. We have to say what we're supporting. So it has to have the funding. If that's the name of it, funding for displaced students, refugee status, whatever, that just needs to be in the motion as a friendly amendment.
Would be inserted after from public education, comma.
Yeah. Okay, so Kristen, so instead of where it says this emergent position statement, it would state the Edmonton Public School Division funding for displaced students, refugee students, and refugee claimants positions, emergent position statement. Craig, is it specific about the motion? Because I have Christine had.
Well, I'm just making sure that I understand the motion.
Okay,
What?
let's just get the wording.
Okay.
Are you okay with that, Kristen, at this point? You've got. Okay, so where it says this emergent position statement, instead you're going to say, oh, Mike's going to help you out. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Cheryl has a recommendation as well.
In that sentence, you'd typically put that as between the two commas that frame that. So it is recommended that the board support the emergent position statement from Edmonton Public Education, comma, give the name of the position, comma, as well as agree to be the seconder of the motion, period. This impacts the division and the students within our division in similar ways identified by EPS background information. Makes sense?
The only piece I would add is that emergent position statement for the spring general meeting, for ASBA's spring general meeting.
Or the.
We will. Yes.
And we don't have to say what meeting. We can just say it is recommended that the board support the ASBA emergent position statement from Edmonton Public Education, comma, give the name of the position statement, comma, as well as agree to be the seconder of the motion, period, and then this impacts. Yes, Edmonton Public Schools.
Christina, you're good. Okay, so I have Christine, Craig, and you're good. Okay, Craig.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm clear on everything. What this emergent position is, and I probably agree with it, I just want to make sure I'm clarified on it, is that it seems that the federal government and the provincial government are treating certain classes of students differently than other classes of students, which is, in my mind, discriminatory. So is that the purpose of this, is to say any student coming from any situation, displaced, war-torn, whatever, should be treated equally the same? And the funding should be the same for every student coming here, and that there should be increased funding after the first year also. Is that the purpose of this?
Christine Lee is going to clarify, but yes.
Yes, you're correct. So the Ukrainian students are classed as displaced students because of the war in Ukraine. And as a displaced student, it's just for this year. A refugee student, when they come to our division, they have 5 years of funding. And so that's where you're getting the two different treatments. Ukrainian students are also being funded per student for every student, where refugees are on the weighted moving average. So that's where you're treated differently on both ends.
Thanks for that update, because it does make an impact on any school division, not only ours, but any school division, and most of them have these type of students coming. And so it's important to make sure that they're funded equally and, just the same funding.
Yes. Christina.
And I think the other piece was that there was Ukrainian funding provided sort of mid-year, right? Where for refugee students or refugee claimant students arriving after the funding cutoff, we're not receiving any funding for them in that current year. And then we're waiting for them to be considered in the weighted moving average, despite extremely high need immediately. Right. So I think there's also like the immediacy of the funding issue. So yeah. And then just a note, just if you could also share my thanks to the Edmonton Public Schools for including refugee claimant students. I think that's an often commented on status as well.
So with that, Kristen, can you come to the mic and read what you have typed? Sorry. Cheryl, can you clearly pay attention? Yes.
Okay.
Not that you don't pay attention, but.
All right. So Christina Larkin moved that the board support the ASBA emergent position statement from Edmonton Public School funding for displaced students, refugee students, and claimant advocacy, as well agree to be the seconder of the motion as this impacts the division and the students within our division in similar ways identified in the EPS background information.
Cheryl.
Close the word in there. Yeah, can you take out the word funding? Yeah.
This is the title of it.
Thank you. Okay. That the board support the ASBA emergent position statement from Edmonton Public Schools, funding for displaced students, refugee students, and claimants, as well as agree to be the seconder of the motion as this impacts the division and the students within our division in similar ways identified in the EPS background information.
The only piece was we're going to put a period after motion and start a new sentence with this.
Okay.
Christina, we're good. Just making sure we got it right. Perfect. Okay, any further discussion on this one? And those in favor? And that's carried. So I will communicate that to board chair Tricia Estabrook, and we'll do work in our community as well. When, Maureen, are you able to get those numbers she's talking about? Okay. When you get them, just let us know as a board so that we're, okay, not next year.
It would be by the
for our
ASBA.
meeting, yes, so.
By June.
Yeah, June 2nd.
Yeah.
So, yeah, end of May. So
And I think just like at least general trends, like they're very specific in this one, but I think so that we can speak to the importance of it within our division. So not like, don't waste your time on the details. I would say like I
Yeah.
think you just need the trends in order.
I need the trends so we can represent it at ASBA, and then as well when we're out in our community and we're representing what we're advocating for, we can represent that locally within our community. So. Okay. So next we have 9.5, which is employee compensation for non-union compensation. Christina.
The memo is before you. I would just make the motion, I guess.
Okay, go ahead.
I move that the board approve a 2% salary increase to non-union employees, excluding executive council, effective September 1st, 2023.
With the fact that the public has not seen this because was not part of the package, if
So
you
I
could just
should-
give a
I
little
should
bit of
talk about it, okay.
yeah, if you could just talk about it a little bit so that there's a bit of background and
Sorry.
kind of the
I'll
history.
just,
So,
yeah, you're right.
yep.
Sorry, it wasn't included. So as part of the Board of Trustees priorities, we prioritize staff well-being as well as respect the hard work across our division and take our responsibility for financial stewardship. We aim to ensure that we have fair financial compensation for all of our division employees. And so following a 1.75% increase that was effective September 1st, 2022, we would like to recommend a 2% salary increase to non-union employees, excluding executive council, effective September 1st, 2023. We have a motion regarding executive council to follow.
Okay. Thank you. So discussion on this one. Tyler.
I'd just like to make it, in case people don't understand publicly, that this puts this group in line with the ATA settlement that they reached and the timing of theirs, so that it puts them on the same level as the ATA settlement. And as far as settlements within the division that have been done, so there's still a couple of collective agreements that are being negotiated. So those are still to be worked out, but we're kind of catching the people up we can with what's going on in the division.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Those in favor? And those opposed? Thank you. And next is the 9.6 employee compensation, non-union compensation, associate superintendents. Christina.
So again, that this was added as an emergent motion, so I'll just speak to the context. Further to the context that Tyler described, just regarding our responsibility with non-union staff, understanding that we do continue negotiations with a couple of employee groups. We, in the fall, approved the 1.75 and have now met the 3.75 for non-union staff, excluding the associate superintendents at their own offering. In the fall, we'd like to offer, I would like to move that the board approve a salary increase of 3.75 for associate superintendents effective September 1st, 2023.
Yeah. Okay. I'll open it for discussion. Cheryl.
And I'm sure trustees have thought of this. I just wanted to point out that the associate superintendents would not be given the same recognition for the current school year for 22-23, 1.575% increase as your other two employee groups that you made reference to in the previous motion. Just wanted to point that out, that they would be a group that does not receive what the other two employee groups received.
So I'll open the discussion in terms of that for, in terms of looking at it for the comparison of the 1.75 increase was given to the non-union staff September 1st. So any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion is on the, oh, Jenny? That's fine, go ahead.
So I want to it's important to me to communicate out of respect for the individuals that we are discussing at this time, because I have high respect and great appreciation for the work that they do and for who they are. And so it's important to me to communicate that to them um, based on the way I am choosing to vote on this. So it's important for me to express to them my sincere gratitude to them, and that the way that I choose to vote today is in no way reflective to them personally or professionally, but is just within consideration of timing and budgeting. And in budgeting, we make a lot of very difficult decisions, and this is one of those for me. And so it's important to me that I communicate that to them, and that is expressed.
Thank you, Jenny. Craig?
I would just echo the same comments that Jenny commented on, and second that as far as my position and my heartfelt thank for every work that's been done.
Okay. Morag?
As a single income house and not receiving a pay increase in 7 years in being here, really appreciate that this would be considered. So every time I've received a pay increase in my senior leadership, I've had to move. And so for you to consider this is a real flattering step. And so thank you for that recognition.
Thank you. Seeing no further comments or questions, I'll move to the vote. Those in favor? And those opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. So with that, we move on to discussion item 10.1. And I just need to scroll in my agenda, see where it is next in my agenda. Perfect. So it is Jenny. Go ahead, Jenny. Yes.
This is here. I appreciate this new section for discussion because that is really the only intention I have here. And so this is in response to, I know we did some mapping out. So the policy was passed in September of this year. We passed the ARAO policy. And as we went through first, second, and third readings of that last year, there was a lot of discussion about definitions and procedures that would follow. And some of that was mapped out in our agenda in September and in October. And so I'm looking just for follow-up and for understanding of what is happening. And so reviewing back, looking at the September board agenda package, the mapping had specifically said that there would be collaboration of the admin committee, the trustees, the DSC, and this and that. I don't actually know what that is. And then the ARAO procedures, Division School Council, and was listed to commence work on that in November and December. And I've had some questions to clarify what that was intended to look like and whether that has commenced or not, specifically from Division School Council. And so just wondering where we are at with definitions. And when those definitions, if they are finished or finalized, what the process, I'm not fully aware of the process here, procedure, I guess. Is that just something we look at ourselves? Is that something the board looks over? And that is the extent of what I have in my notes.
And I appreciate you bringing this forward. You'll see that this is under a new section of our agenda's discussion item. And I know that when we have our reports from our executive council, they do provide some information, but I think having this as a discussion item is important. I know that you've requested some information in here. So at this point, I see kind of Morag is maybe making way to the mic. So and go ahead, Jenny.
Sorry, one piece I missed. We had listed a diversity and inclusion parent table to be held in January or February. And that would include DSC, DIPT, and the World Cafe and all administrators. And so just that piece is all.
So I'll start with Morag and then we can go from there just to get some information and then have some
So I
discussion.
think the definitions were the ones that we reworked on and submitted for the ARAO, and they're in the policy. So I think they're there. That's the first thing. Okay.
My understanding of I would share that understanding with Morag with respect to definitions. They were brought back to the committee 2 times, brought back to the board a third and final time for discussion and approved as part of the policy. So that left what the work that was left to be done would be developing a procedure for the policy. And with that, I turn that over to Morag. Just wanted to affirm the definition piece.
And the first day for meeting about the procedures tomorrow. So we have the group of ARAO people gathering for 3 hours to really chart out the next couple of months. To be very honest with you, it's been a challenging year time-wise to get everything going and connecting. And I would say that our ARAO group, we've started to talk about professional learning as well, which has slowed down the procedure conversation as far as the whole system goes and building the capacity. So that's where we're at with the procedure. For sure, when we get to procedures, we'll have to involve HR. We'll have to involve various groups because anti-racism, anti-oppression work really does impact, and system analysis, it impacts the whole system. So that's where we're at there. And we'll continue to update as we have. And then the last piece was the diversity and inclusion parent table. And the goal was to bring the student forum data back to them. It didn't get started until we had the student forum in February and we met with the administrators. And so it would be actually a great activity to start maybe end of May, gathering those diversity and inclusion parents and sharing that information. So that would be the next step. And the DIPT, so Diversity and Inclusion Parent Table, was a group of people that have not met within a year and a half. So I would like to probably go out and see if there are other parents who might now be interested, because I think that group of parents who were involved, there was about 40 of them. I think, Allison, you were there that evening. We likely would have a change of guard. So that would be something I definitely can take on starting in May.
Craig.
Yeah, I would like to talk about this a little bit. And I would make sure that people understand that I am against racism and oppression. However, I've received a letter from a parent that indicates that some of the information in our policy was taken from the critical race theory. If that's the case, then I'm a little upset because it's an unproven theory down in the States. And why are we modeling something up in Canada that isn't part of us? And so, and there was no recognition of that in the policy. So that would be a form of plagiarism if that's happening. So my concern is that we passed a policy that appears to have been plagiarized and no definite recognition that when it came from the critical race theory. And that is a theory that's being widely debated in the States. It's not accepted by everybody. And so I have a concern that the board wasn't fully informed of all of that information in there when we passed it. And so, and again, I'm for anti-racism and anti-oppression, but I have some concerns that we weren't fully informed of all of the information that was brought forward and how it was brought forward. So I would just like some conversation on that, please.
Cheryl?
If we're going to bring forward questions regarding foundational theory sources, I would suggest that from my lens as superintendent, that goes beyond a discussion table. And if there's questions that are specific to your administration that require some thought and time to explore and research, Craig, I would ask that you provide opportunity for that individual to explore and research and provide response rather than putting them on the spot around a board meeting table.
No, I appreciate that, Cheryl. And I didn't need to have a response today. I'm just asking for at a later date to bring up some of that information so that we can allay the concerns of parents in our division. And I appreciate your comment and would say, yes, let's table it so that they can get more information and then be able to discuss it more fully. Thank you.
So a reasonable conversation around a discussion table would be individuals forward questions ahead of time if there's going to be questions and a conversation so that people can be prepared, or bring up questions around the table and ask that a response be provided.
Okay, so I have Christine, Morag, Jenny.
I think it's really important. Well, our duty is to represent the people that vote us into this position. I think it's important that we choose our words wisely when we engage around this board table. Because, Craig, what I hear you asking for is what are the sources you used for the information given? The words that I heard louder than what I believe is the intent is I'm concerned about the plagiarism. I'm questioning integrity. I'm questioning work ethic. Those are two very different things. And to publicly accuse our staff members of that in a board meeting is not acceptable. So I think for you to ask, I've received a letter. Can I get confirmation of the resources? And pause that. And perhaps if that needs to be had later, then we have that at the appropriate time. A public board meeting is not the appropriate time to question those things before getting the right information.
Morag?
I will gladly be tasked with that in working with the Anti-Racism, Anti-Oppression Committee. And so that's a group of 8 people, administrators. The policy was directly used and worked with from Edmonton Public. So they did a lot of the research and work as well. So I want to give credit where credit is due. Edmonton Public has done an amazing job of I would say pioneering anti-racism, anti-oppression policy work. And yeah, we'll definitely provide those sources. That's great. No problem.
Jenny?
I appreciate that work in providing us those sources. Just a follow-up question. When you just mentioned that the ARAO group is meeting tomorrow, could I just clarify who the ARAO group includes?
That's an administrator committee, which is where it originated and where the policy originated from and the work that has been done.
Jenny?
This is the same committee that wrote the policy?
They collaborated with different groups, so parent groups, students, and yes, they were the originators of the policy and sort of collated and I'd say promoted the work in regard to the anti-racism, anti-oppression policy. And in my absence last year, I believe you met with Kaylee King and Tracy on a couple of times going through first and second and third readings. They are a part of that group. Yeah.
Jenny?
I guess I remember this policy being something we treated with a lot of sensitivity. And one of the topics of discussion was ascertaining whether or not we had enough contributing input into it. And if we had gathered adequate student voice, parent voice, teacher voice. And in that, where we came to settle was that the process in developing these procedures is where we would gather that. And when I look at the mapping that's been outlined, that is mapped. When we say we're going to include trustees, DSC, the DIPT, I'm not sure what DIS and that is, but that's listed, as well as that ARAO admin committee. And so what I'm looking to feel reassured in is that those other groups their voices are being heard and that they are being reached out to be given that opportunity. And that this is something that we are carefully gathering input from every avenue that we can.
Craig.
I would just like to make a comment that, number one, I appreciate the honesty of answers from Morag and Cheryl. Thank you. I didn't throw out, I just said this was a concern. If there's a concern or there's a perception, in my lifetime of living, a perception is a reality until proven elsewise. Now that I've found out that we took most of it from Edmonton Public, then it appears that Edmonton Public didn't put all the information in. All I'm asking for, and I don't care if we discuss it in camera, I don't care if we discuss it later, I just want a review that when we did this policy, that certain things were checked off, because that's what was indicated to us as a board. I'm not impugning anybody's morality, honesty, or work ethic. It's a concern. So, and I apologize if I did not get it in time. I was gone for 4 or 5 days. At the end of Easter, I was at public school boards, and then we went to Vancouver for a visit to an aunt that we haven't seen for 5 years. So I apologize if I didn't get it in there, but because it was listed here as a discussion item, that's why I brought it up. And I didn't expect, and I'm sorry if I didn't use the right word, Cheryl, I didn't expect an answer today, but I do expect some sort of answer later on after the research has been done to clarify that so that we can be upfront and transparent with all of our parents in this division. So I just want to make that clear that I'm not impugning anybody's morality, honesty, work ethic, but it's a concern and we need to deal with it. So I appreciate Morag saying that she will look at it and get back to us with some more information. And at the time, I wasn't aware that we were just basically copying Edmonton Public's. They had mentioned that they'd looked at it, but I didn't realize that they basically took Edmonton Public stuff. And I might have missed that in the meeting, and I apologize for that. But I just think it's important to get the facts straight and that the public knows what we've done.
Cheryl.
I would concur that avoiding misinformation, correct information is important. It would be misinformation to state that that committee did not represent that they used Edmonton Public as a guiding document, because that was clearly stated in the presentation of the policy, clearly stated on at least, and I take good notes, at least 3 or 4 occasions, it was clearly stated that Edmonton Public, who are leaders in anti-oppression policy, anti-racism policy, was used as a template for our policy, which wouldn't be the first policy that we've done that with. Certainly Edmonton Public is a leader in this province for policy development. We've looked at Edmonton Public's policies in the development of many of our policies. That's not the only one. And so certainly when we looked at, for example, developing our expulsion, suspension and expulsion, but we looked at Edmonton Public. When we looked at our off-campus policy, we looked at Edmonton Public. Many jurisdictions across this province looked at Edmonton Public and Calgary, CBE, because they've got a team of lawyers and policy experts that review their policies. And so we looked to them for guidance. And I know it was clearly stated by that committee and by the person representing that on numerous occasions that was used as a source document. And so certainly I just want to be clear that there was nothing whatsoever. And so, to be understanding what answers you request, knowing that it's an Edmonton Public policy, as we have in many other policies, could we just get some clarity on since you know where the foundation was, what the question is that you're wanting explored.
Thanks. And I apologize for not remembering that, but my concern is that we've used a document, or Edmonton Public used a document that is clearly confrontational and not accepted across the board in the United States, which is the critical race theory. And so that would be my major concern. Has the policy that we got from Edmonton Public, did they use the critical race theory to put in definitions, to put in things that were in the policy? So that's the concern. And I don't need an answer today, but it's something that we need to look in.
So Cheryl, does that help in terms of what he's
That
asking
helps
for?
with clarity.
Okay.
I mean, with respect to what theory is sort of the backdrop behind any policy, I guess would be a matter of representation and opinion. But certainly we will bring forward, what is the foundational documents for those definitions, I think is what you're looking at, is what's the foundational documents.
Thank you.
Thank you for that discussion. I recognize that we moved through public forum during this time period, so I did not want to interrupt the flow of that conversation, but I will just confirm if there is any. Okay, so Jenny, you had a comment still?
I appreciate all of the conversation around this item of discussion, and just wanted to, and that conversation has taken a few different avenues. And so in the development of the conversation, I just wanted to just circle back a little bit to make sure that some of the pieces that I'm attempting to reassure some of these different parties on isn't lost in that conversation. And so just circling back, just wanting to confirm that there is an intention to collaborate with these other parties that we've mapped out being involved in this process with this policy with the procedure development of this policy.
It has to be.
And okay, and so when you say we'll start in May, can you clarify for me?
Sure. Yeah, no. So the procedure we start tomorrow, and the administrators together will likely gather what will direct the procedure. They'll probably consult Edmonton Public, Calgary Board of Education, and the procedures that currently are in place are administrative procedures to see different templates. So they've already started to gather and look at those pieces. And within procedures, we see lots of things like HR practices, like curriculum and resource reviews, all of those different components within an educational system that can be impacted by anti-racism, anti-oppression, right? And so what I would anticipate tomorrow for the 3 hours that they're going to meet, they will likely be starting to look at those different procedures and documents that are in place and look for some through lines to come up with some common themes that they want to address and talk about. From there, I would anticipate that if HR is something, they would involve HR group to talk about how can we look at the human resources and support the human resources department to utilize ARAO policy, et cetera, et cetera. So if it's something around how we recruit groups for parents, how do we utilize ARAO in that, with that lens? So depending upon what the administrator group looks at targeting, and I'm sure there'll probably be at least 10 different strands within the procedures that they will look at, because most of the procedures I've looked at have many different components. It will have to involve many different layers of the system. As far as the DIPT, so the Diversity and Inclusion Parent Table, I absolutely will put a call out to parents to see who would be interested, and I would likely connect with the Division School Council as well to see if there'd be anybody who'd be interested and willing to participate and have a conversation to review the student forum data, because that was the goal, is to kind of loop back to ensuring that student voice from the Wellness and Inclusion Student Forum is heard and solicited and utilized and implemented in all the right ways. So yeah, no, I think that can work really well, and it fits in with the timeline well as well. So does that help? And this and that is something I send out monthly to the system that details all of the things that happen under instructional services throughout the month. So I call it this and that.
Jenny.
For further clarification, when you reach out to parents to form the DIPT, is that a general invitation to all parents? Is that, how is that? Is that parent councils?
So I would follow the same procedure that I did before. Working with Garrett, we send out a call out through School Messenger for any parents who are interested.
Thank you for clarifying all of that for me.
You're good. So with that, we will move on to our next item, is division highlights. It's a great opportunity for us to highlight a couple quick things that have happened since our last board meeting that you see as a division highlight. So who would like to start? Tyler.
I can start. I've got nothing. Moving on. I've since forgotten everything. So
Christina.
So I have two, well, a few. So first, I need to apologize. I've been terrible at making it to my school councils, so this is just a public apology to my school councils. But have been able to engage with a few other highlights this month. One, I was able to attend the DARE art. What's it called? Gala. Thank you. Like fun thing at the where student artwork from around the division was highlighted on the topic of where we belong, and it was in support of Project Sunflower, which supports Ukrainian displaced students, to use the language from earlier. And it was just really moving. I always cry at DARE Gala. It just, thinking about all these students working on these projects just makes me teary. So it was so beautiful. And I was able to bring home a couple beautiful art pieces that I love in my home now, and was so moved in particular by the Nicholas Sharon student collaborative piece. They made a giant sunflower with every single student in Nicholas Sharon school, and it was enormous. And I came back and bought it for them back to put in their school. And then thank you to Victoria, who was one of the organizers, because I realized after I purchased it, because I was so moved, I was like, you guys need to have this back. It was so nice. But I forgot that it's enormous and it didn't fit in my car. So Victoria had to drive it to the school for me. So thank you, Victoria. And then just on that same comment, sort of this anti-oppression theme of DARE and our ARAO, this school year has been really, really challenging for queer educators and queer students across North America. And unfortunately, it's just a topic that just like keeps bubbling up. And as a queer person myself, it's just been a really challenging school year on that topic. And so this month I was able to go to a QSA at one of our high schools and hang out with the students, and got, beat at Uno, did some crafts, and just so moved that it's a space where, sorry, Andrea's not here, so I got to cry on her behalf. The movement of QSAs, where students, it's not anymore a space where they need to come and like figure out how to survive as much as it used to be. They're there like playing cards and doing crafts and like existing together. And it was just such a moving experience to have. And so I just want to send appreciation to all the students for being beautiful students, like all of our students, and to the educators and staff at our schools that make those spaces available to play cards at lunch and exist together. So yeah, just really moved by that. So, and then shout out to Lakey. They gave us a beautiful tour this month and I really appreciate it.
Thanks for sharing and taking on Andrea's role. Jenny, are you ready? Okay.
I have been away for a lot of the month, but one of the things that the one thing I wanted to highlight today was just and this is across the division, but I've seen it in my particular schools and in my kids' schools, is the initiative for outdoor classrooms and outdoor learning. And with the weather changing, and our schools are amazing and they accomplish that in all weather, but with the weather changing, I'm hearing so much from kids about it, and even from high school students. And so that's just really satisfying and meaningful to hear that strategies are reaching people, and in a positive way, they're making a difference and making memories and making learning connections. And that is a creative and a unique approach to learning, and I appreciate that. So I just wanted to highlight that.
Thank you. Craig?
I went to Legally Blonde Junior at Senator Joyce Fairburn. We watched the grade 8s, and then the next night they had the grade 7s. It was a well done performance. During the Easter holidays, I attended Public School Boards Association's meeting as our rep, and I think every one of you got an email from explaining what we did at that. So I just remind everyone to read, because there was some really good information about the Indian Act, the superintendent evaluation, and on-site BEd courses from the University of Calgary. And then Janet Brown gave us a very good presentation on that. Just as a head up, Garrett shared with me an article I wrote about the GEM High School students, and he's going to send it to Kara of the Public School Boards to put it on their website. So that kind of is important, because it shows that we don't need to have charter schools or private schools to have success. And just so that the board is aware that in June, I was able to get it on the Public School Boards Association meeting, the EAT program, kindergarten, and $10 daycare, and the impacts it'll have on the different school boards. So, and other than that, I was gone a few days, so that's my report.
Sounds good. And definitely with April being a month of Easter break and spring break, it was definitely challenging, I think, with meeting the movement of school council dates as well for many trustees. But a couple of things that I'd like to highlight during this part is the discussion. So, and item next or coming up is the ASCA conference and AGM. And one thing to highlight for me is hearing the parent conversation around their role in advocacy for what they can do through ASCA. So just knowing that through school councils, and they're having conversations and just looking at that other level of how they can be involved in their children's education and in that advocacy piece. So I know it's not always everybody's cup of tea, but hearing the conversations and people engaging, that is great. And then the other thing, and I don't know for sure, and Christine can tell me if I'm wrong, but tomorrow is Admin Professionals Day. And back when it was winter and we had our caretakers out taking care of the snow, and I was so impressed when I was driving to schools and what they were doing. And this week and the last, just coming back from that spring break time, and I don't know if we refer to our people when we walk in the door as admin professionals. Perfect. So this is totally in line then. So our Admin Professional Day is tomorrow. We'd like to certainly pass on our warm congratulations to all the work that they do. And one thing that I have noticed going into schools, if you go at the beginning of a day and that admin professional is sitting there and they know every student that walks through the door, they know what they need to do for each of those students. They know what that little tweak that they might need to get their day going right. And it's just amazing to see these people in our schools every day taking care of our students in that unique way. Right. So we have other people that work in our schools, but just to see and to recognize and to highlight the work that they do in our schools in knowing our kids and just supporting them in ways that they need to be supported when they walk in our schools every day. So thank you to them. So next we will jump on to board chair report, and the first item is the arts She doesn't have anything, just with it being a different month, so she's good. Next is the 12.1 Arts Alive and Well in Lethbridge Schools. So virtually installed, we would like to acknowledge that it's back for 2023. The deadline was just recently April 21st for the submissions. For that, they do have the event coming up here in May, and I will be attending, and it is definitely open to all of our trustees to come as well. And then we would like to extend a huge appreciation to Kathy for her efforts in coordinating the celebration of student art in Lethbridge, and Garrett, who takes on the lead on organizing the virtual exhibition. So I know that Christina had just spoke about the work of our students, and I think that this is just amazing that we have a way to be able to celebrate this student art within our division, and we have some key people to thank for us to be able to do this. So if you can attend, do we have the date of the event, the opening? May 13th. It's the Saturday. Yes, Saturday, May 13th. So if you're able to come, that would be great. I'll be attending for sure, and I've certainly let Kathy know that. But we would gladly have any other trustees come as well. 2 o'clock. Go ahead.
So that would be 1 o'clock for the board member who's giving these
That'd be me.
welcoming and congratulations to students, and then 2 o'clock to everyone else. So 2 o'clock at SAG.
Thank you. And next is the ASCA conference in AGM. So I was able to attend that both in person and virtually. It was great to have the opportunity to have that virtual piece. I know that there were parents from our division that did go in person as well as represented virtually for the AGM piece. Debbie Pusher was one of the keynote speakers, and she does amazing work. And I say the name, and I was at a school council meeting recently, and administrator was like, big smile, and I said the name now, and more pops up and big smile. Yeah. So she does amazing work. She definitely offers support to any school division, and just delighted the room with the information that she had. Her website is debbiepusher.ca. You can go and check her out and find out more information. In regards to the AGM, there was a number of resolutions. It was certainly a long day. It didn't finish until 6:10 p.m. So we had parents that were on from around the province that completed the work that they needed to do. And the position statements of ASCA that were approved there will be posted, I would assume, later this week, but they're not available yet. So maybe at DSC, that can be something that I'm guessing that they would have that on the agenda anyway, just to share whatever those position statements are. So are there any questions on the ASCA conference in AGM? Trustees are always welcome. There was from across the province, I would say probably about a third of the school boards represented in the province were there present. So it was great to have that opportunity to engage in a different way with parents from across the province and hear the things that different schools and divisions are doing. So, and the trustees often had many times where we sat and had conversations. So it was good. And next is election advocacy. So I know that we worked hard as a board to come up with where we got to with our election advocacy postcard. So that is included in the package, as well as with the advocacy priorities, with the more definitions is included in the package as well. Garrett has posted this to the website. And then just in terms of our advocacy as a board, we have committed to work and attend and host 2 election forums, one on the east and one on the west, in conjunction with the ATA and Holy Spirit. So those dates will be coming out once they are for sure confirmed. Oh, Cheryl. Okay, and Cheryl's going to give us a little bit of information on that.
I have the confirmed date and time for the west. So the west will be Friday, May 12th. 4 o'clock at GS Lakey. It's the Lethbridge School Division AT Local that is taking the lead on that one in collaboration with this board. And so have a meeting established Wednesday with their political advocacy chair, Kevin McGreeth, and myself, and Garrett, and Allison. Christina can't make it. Thank you for trying to make that, Christina. And so where we will review any logistics questions, things like that. So it should all be ready to go Friday. The other one that is currently scheduled for Wednesday, May 17th. That date is tentative and under review because that's being organized by Holy Spirit, ATA Local and Holy Spirit Board. And so I know that they've been trying to find a date other than the 17th that will accommodate the candidates because, of course, the 17th is the Edwin Parr banquet. And so it would be difficult for any board members to make that. I will certainly let you know as soon as I hear what that date is, but for sure that's when the West has been set. I just heard that today confirmed. And I think we're ready to roll out with that. And we'll give the board any details regarding, you know, I'm assuming we're having a table and that type of thing. And I'll work with Christina on those details in terms of representation and a table for the board.
So we will have a table at both events, both the East and the West.
Right.
And Garrett's going to provide us with the information necessary for that. Once we do have dates, Garrett will make that confirmed. Then Garrett will make that public. As well, the postcards, he's going to provide each of us trustees with a bunch so that when we're out at school council meetings, that we can be letting parents know that these are, if they would like to advocate for the same things that we see as priorities for our division, then that's great. And then a couple other things that we had discussed is that we would be sending a letter including our position statements to each of the candidates and requesting a meeting with each of them for the board chair at least, and then anybody else that can join. So we will, because I know coordination over that time period is going to be a little tight, but that we will at least offer that invitation to each of them for them to meet and to review some of these. So that's where we're at in terms of our next month. We will wait for we won't send those letters out until the writ is dropped, which will be next week. So Craig.
Yes, just as part of public school boards election advocacy, can we send that postcard up to them because they'd like to post it on their website?
Absolutely.
They're asking all of the boards that are members to do that. So
yep. So Garrett, if you can send both the postcard and the lengthier description, just so that they both go hand in hand. So, okay. Thank you. Seeing no other questions, we'll move on. Next is the new 12.4 is the expulsion committee. So is that Christine?
Thank you. Policy 502.3.7 states the board shall be informed of the results of each expulsion hearing, and in procedure 10.7 states the decision of the committee shall be reported to the board at its next regular meeting. So that's why I'm bringing this to you today. The expulsion committee convened on April 24th, 2023. The committee was comprised of myself, Jenny Steed, and a principal from a school that was not the student's school. The committee heard representation from the principal recommending expulsion from the school. The committee also heard from the parent and representatives of the parent. The committee supported the expulsion of the student with conditions for return to school. The conditions consider the best interests of the student and the school context that requires a safe environment for all students and staff. Careful consideration was given to the provision of an alternate program that the division is able to offer the student, which is better suited to meet the student's needs.
Thank you for that report and for the work of the committee. And I think we are nearing the end. So we have our two pieces of correspondence there that we received. Oh, sorry. Yes. Yep. 12.5. So we did pull from the consent agenda. So 12.5 is the school boundary alignment committee. So you wanted that pulled from the consent agenda. And Craig, I'll go ahead with you.
yes, I just would make sure that we add that in our discussion, we talked about gathering the information, and before any decision is made, is making an effort to talk to the stakeholders, the parents of the different divisions of the different schools that could be affected, and it's not indicated there. And I just want to make sure that parents understand that that's part of our committee, is that we'll gather the information and we'll take it to the parents before we even think about what we want to do. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew about that.
Go ahead, Christine.
Yeah, and I think what's important also to note is that we are going to do a pre-engagement to the work of the committee probably in the fall sometime. So we'll do some we'll come up with that to talk about why we're going to be doing what we're doing so that there's some engagement there.
Yep, thank you. And then next was the board budget committee report. So I touched base with Christina. So sometimes when we write a report, just because we write it doesn't mean that we were necessarily in attendance. I did know that Christina was in attendance at the meeting, so I wanted to clarify. And just with it being a budget meeting, I figured that we should make sure that she is added to the those that were in attendance. So we're just adding her to the those that were in attendance. So it's very simple piece. I just wanted to make sure that was on the record that
I forgot my own name. That's all.
brought her own name. It's all good. So, and sometimes when we write a report doesn't mean we were necessarily there, right? So I was like, we need to make sure for listing who's there that Christina Larkin is added to that report that she was present. So that was all I had for that. And then policy advisory committee. Who was that you that pulled that one? Go ahead.
Well, that's a perfect segue because mine was clerical. Because we're accountable to our terms of reference, I would just request that attendees to the meeting are listed on the report. They just aren't listed on the policy advisory report. Thank you.
Thanks. We'll make sure it gets put on next time.
I think the request is that it's put on this one. So if you can have it put on and just so it is on
If I can
record.
remember everybody.
That's okay. You don't need to tell us right now. Trish will remember,
Yeah.
just so that is
Okay.
on the
Yeah.
record as corrected. So
Okay, thank you.
yep. So with that, we then go on to our correspondence received. So those are two great documents that we received in regards to the operating reserves that was approved. As well, the other one was in regards to the approval for the planning funding to cover the site. So the west side study, yes. Okay, so that is great that those were both received. So with that, I need a motion to move into camera. Christine, and those in favor? And that's carried.